All those degrees, all those fancy schools didn't help me connect into who I needed to be as a person. Do not be afraid to fail.
Read, write, read.
Want to soar? Get a mentor. Today, let's learn from Michelle Obama and some of her best life-changing advice. Mentor me, Michelle. Also, if you want to learn how to have confidence like Michelle Obama and other women and or Black entrepreneurs, check out my 254 video series. It's free. It's in the description below.
Doubts don't go away. You just learn how to deal with them.
Young people from the toughest backgrounds who never stop believing in their dreams.
The only way you succeed in life, the only way you learn, is by failing. It's not the failure, it's what you do after you fail.
Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1. Find your passion.
You talk about the worries that you had about other people judging your career choices, especially leaving law. How did you overcome that? And what would you say to others facing the same dilemma?
Well, the first thing that I had to overcome was my own guilt. Because when you spend so much time and money, in my case, taking out student loans, I came out of law school with a lot of debt. The notion that I wouldn't want to invest financially to recoup that, that initial investment was a struggle for me, especially growing up as a working class kid. You know, I talk about the conversation I had with my mother where I was trying to break down how I wasn't passionate about my career and how I feel guilty talking to a woman who had sacrificed so much for me and probably never had the luxury of thinking about something as trivial as passion. You know, so explaining that to a working class family, how you're going to walk away from a solid career and a solid income to, pursue what's deep in your heart. You know, my parents didn't.
And were they your biggest worry when you decided to leave?
Initially, they were. But also, it was part of the challenge was what else was I going to do? You know, that's part, I describe myself as a box checker because that's how we teach kids. It's like there's a path, you pick a career when you're 7, you study that career in elementary school, you go to college, you get a major, and life choices are not that orderly, but that's how we train kids, and I was right on that path, and I knew how to achieve, I knew how to get A's and how to get to the next level, but no one taught me how to dig deep inside my soul and figure out what I cared about. And we don't talk to kids about what they care about. We talk about what they should major in, what they should study. And those two things are very different. So part of the struggle was figuring I had to relearn how to educate myself about who I was. School didn't teach me that. All those degrees, all those fancy schools didn't help me connect into who I needed to be as a person. So I had to rewind all that learning. I did what I called informational interviews. I had to go out and just meet people who were doing all sorts of things that seemed interesting to figure out what I cared about. Was it kids? Was it working with kids? Was it mentoring? Was it education? I didn't know. I hadn't explored it because I was on the path to be a lawyer. So that was the hardest thing for me to understand how to do, is to walk away from the formal training that I had gotten and to swerve into something more creative.
And so would your advice be to others, it is important to find your passion in life?
It is absolutely important. And I encourage young people to try on different hats. I think it's a shame that kids are forced to figure out so early in their life and get on a path. So I encourage kids to do internships, to work, to talk to people who are doing things that they think are interesting, because most kids are intimidated about approaching you, for example, and saying, Holly, you've done some swerving. Tell me about what you're doing, and having those conversations in high school and in college before you commit to something. But I think kids feel the pressure to have to know what they're going to be.
It's such a young age.
Exactly.
You're 16, 17, 18 when you're making these big life decisions.
Yeah. In one of the first lines in the first chapters, a question that I hate the most that we ask children is, what do you want to be when you grow up? as if growing up is finite,
Yeah.
as if you get to a place and at some point that's the end. And that's sort of one of our big dilemmas, that we ask kids so early to figure out who you're going to be at 5 and 7 and 10 and even 20 years old. So I do encourage young people to be open to the swerve and don't beat themselves up if they feel they've maybe not made the right first choice, because life, Holly, is long. And as you know, we can have many lives within a life. We are always evolving. That is why I called the book Becoming. You know, this notion that we ever stop evolving is just wrong.
Rule number 2, read and write.
Read, write, read. If the president were here, one of his greatest strengths is reading. That's one of the reasons why he's a good communicator, why he's such a good writer. He's a voracious reader. So we're trying to get our girls, no matter what, to love reading and to challenge themselves with what they read, not just read the gossip books, but to push themselves beyond and do things that maybe they wouldn't do. So I would encourage you all to read, just keep reading. And writing is another skill. It's practice. The more you write, the better you get. Drafts. Our kids are learning. The first draft means nothing. You're going to do 7, 10 drafts. That's writing. It's not failure. It's not the teacher not liking you because it's all marked up in red. When you get to be a good writer, you mark your own stuff in red. And you rewrite, and you rewrite, and you rewrite. That's what writing is. And if you come out with those skills, and then you're confident, and you can articulate, and you can stand up straight and look anybody in the eye and say, this is who I am, it's a pleasure to meet you. That's one of the things we try to do with our mentoring program with young girls. My message to them is, if you can walk into the White House and meet the First Lady and say, my name is, how are you, and look me in the eye, then there's nothing you can't do. That's why it's important. If you guys walked here, are sitting here in front of all these people, standing tall, asking questions, using your voice, you have to practice that. These arenas just show up again and again, and then you just get used to it. The nerves go away, and you start relaxing into your own abilities. But it's practice.
Rule number 3, fail your way to success.
This is what I tell my daughters every day. Do not be afraid to fail, because that oftentimes is the thing that keeps us as women and girls back, because we think we have to be right. We think we have to be perfect. We think that we can't stumble. And the only way you succeed in life, the only way you learn, is by failing. It's not the failure, it's what you do after you fail. You know, do you let it eat you up? Do you quit? Do you give up? Or do you let it bolster you? Does it serve as the challenge in your mind to do more, to take some risks, to step outside of your comfort zone?
Rule number 4, have mentors.
What would you say to young women and to young men about the importance of seeking out strong mentors, and what did they mean to you?
Oh, my goodness. You don't do anything alone. And I think a lot of young people think that they look at people like us and think, you just magically appeared, you became, and there you are. And it's like, no, I always looked ahead of me at the women primarily who were doing the things that I wanted to do. I talk a lot about Valerie Jarrett, for example, who has worked in our administration, but I met her very early on before Barack and I even got married. And she, for me, was one of the first examples of a strong professional woman who was a single parent, who was doing a phenomenal job as a mother and was just a boss at work. And watching her balance that and not losing herself in either role. You know, I talk about how I'd sit in a meeting with her and she'd be in the midst of, business leaders sitting around the table, the mayor on the phone, and her secretary would call and say her daughter had just got home from school and wanted to talk. And she turned herself off in a second because she said, I will always make time for my daughter, So I saw how important it was that even in the height of your career, putting your kids first was important. And that helped me sort of think about how I wanted the White House experience to feel for my daughters. That's why we, in so many instances, we would stop our day, no matter what was going on, and give that time to the kids, because we wanted them to feel like they were at the center of everything, even when their mom and dad were some of the most powerful people in the world. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't have known that example was possible had I not looked ahead at the women who were my mentors.
And rule number 5, the last one before a very special bonus clip, is know your value.
I was the vice president of community outreach for the University of Chicago Hospital. And I got that job because I didn't compromise. Because before working at that job, I was working as an associate dean. I had Malia. Barack was in the U.S. Senate. So I was basically, mothering part-time on my own. I had a full-time job, so I tried part-time. I've talked about this before. I tried part-time because I thought I have to figure this out. I have to be able to pick the kids up. I've got to be able to do all this. So tried part-time. So only thing I found out from part-time was that you just get paid part-time. Because I was still doing a full-time job. I was just cramming it all into the few hours that I was there and driving myself crazy. So I had vowed that if I continued to work, that I would never settle for part-time. I knew what my time and energy was worth. So when I went into the president's office to interview for that job, I thought, I have a little baby, I don't have babysitting, so here we go. We're all gonna go in to see the president because this is who I am.
Yeah.
And I said, and if I take this job, I need flexibility and I need full pay. So if you want me to leave my baby and my kids, then you're gonna have to pay me because I'm gonna do the job. That was never a question, I could deliver, but I knew then I wasn't gonna sell myself short. I don't ever view it as bravery.
Yeah, you didn't think that was brave saying, look, right. I'm gonna be paid full time?
Right, I just viewed it as, I'm not gonna be taken advantage of. I am just not gonna keep selling myself.
You knew your value.
That's absolutely
You knew your value.
Right.
Now I've got a really special bonus clip from Michelle on how to be authentic that I think you're going to enjoy. But before that, it's time for the 3-point landing questions. Time to move from just watching a video to taking action in your life or business. Here we go. Number 1, who is your single most important mentor? Number 2, what's the lesson you've learned from them that you need to remind yourself of daily? And number 3, what book will you commit to reading this week?
Next, I've always felt a deep sense of obligation to make the biggest impact possible with this incredible platform. So I took on issues that were personal to me. Issues like helping families raise healthier kids, honoring the incredible military families that I've met out on the campaign trail, inspiring our young people to value their education and finish college. Now, some folks criticize my choices for not being bold enough, but these were my choices, my issues, and I decided to tackle them in a way that felt most authentic to me, in a way that was both substantive and strategic, but also fun and hopefully inspiring. So I immersed myself in the policy details. I worked with Congress on legislation. I gave speeches to CEOs, military generals, Hollywood executives. But I also worked to ensure that my efforts would resonate with kids and families. And that meant doing things in a creative and unconventional way. So yeah, I planted a garden and hula hooped on the White House lawn with kids. I did some mom dancing on TV. I celebrated military kids with Kermit the Frog. I asked folks across the country to wear their alma mater's t-shirts for college signing day. And at the end of the day, by staying true to the me I've always known, I found that this journey has been incredibly freeing. Because no matter what happened, I had the peace of mind of knowing that all of the chatter, the name calling, the doubting, all of it was just noise. It did not define me. It didn't change who I was. And most importantly, it couldn't hold me back. I have learned that as long as I hold fast to my beliefs and values and follow my own moral compass, then the only expectations I need to live up to are my own.
If you want more Michelle, check out the top 10 rules video made in her. The link is right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
Facing and overcoming adversity is actually one of your biggest advantages.
You gotta be open to taking some risks.